Hey everybody, I'm here with some book recommendations. I decided to pick out a few that were not on the list that I had previously posted on my website, and I'm in a unique position to pull from my personal library at home and actually be in my office. So I'm going to start with the book Thunderstruck by Erik Larson. This book, as I've already recommended, Devil in the White City, is about Holly Crippen, who was an unlikely murderer, and Marconi, the guy who was responsible for inventing the communication devices that people were able to use to transfer information ship to ship. And one of the paragraph I'm going to read from the back says, with his unparalleled narrative skills, Erik Larson guides us through a relentlessly suspenseful chase over the waters of the North Atlantic. Along the way, he tells of a sad and tragic love affair that was described on the front pages of newspapers around the world, a chief inspector who found himself strangely sympathetic to the killer and his lover, and a driven and compelling inventor who transformed the way we communicate. I love Erik Larson's writing, and I highly recommend this. I also would like to recommend this slender volume, Chimamanda Adichie's We Should All Be Feminists. This was kind of a Cliff's Notes version, if you will, of a TED Talk that she gave. I thought that this was incredibly insightful and interesting, just about our attitudes about how we treat women, how women think of themselves, and one of the reasons why the word feminism should not be a dirty word. And she comes with a unique perspective as well, since she is not American. So she's reflecting on her own culture and so forth. And it's a quick read, but lots and lots and lots of things to think about for long after the read is over. My next recommendation is this one, which is quite a bit longer than the previous recommendation. This is Kavalier and The Amazing Adventures of Kavalier and Clay by Michael Chabon. And it did win the Pulitzer Prize several years ago. I just loved this book. Once I got into it, I just could not put it down. And this follows Joe Kavalier, a young Jewish artist who has also been trained in the art of Houdini-esque escape, has just smuggled himself out of Nazi-invaded Prague and landed in New York City. His Brooklyn cousin, Sammy Clay, is looking for a partner to create heroes, stories, and art for the latest novelty to hit America, the comic book. Drawing on their own fears and dreams, Kavalier and Clay create The Escapist, The Monitor, and Luna Moth, inspired by the beautiful Rosa Sachs, who will become linked by powerful ties to both men. I think this is awesome. This is sort of based very, 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 very loosely on the two dudes who came up with Superman. The time period's correct for that, but otherwise it's all fiction, and I just think this is awesome and so well written. My next recommendation is Audrey Neffenegger's The Time Traveler's Wife. The time traveling does make for a very confusing plot, but I think she does a really nice job of keeping things clear as things move back and forth. This is ultimately a love story, and a tragic one at that. I cried very, very hard in this one, but sometimes that's just the kind of book that you need. And a most untraditional love story is the celebrated tale of Henry de Tamble, a dashing, adventuresome librarian who travels involuntarily through time, and Claire Abshire, an artist whose life takes a natural, sequential course. Henry and Claire's passionate affair endures across a sea of time and captures them in an impossibly romantic trap that tests the strength of fate and basks in the bonds of love. You know how I feel about art, and you've seen this picture up in my classroom. I loved the novel that was inspired by this painting. This is something that was made up by Tracy Chevalier, the author of Girl with a Pearl Earring, which is the same name as the art piece by Vermeer. And essentially what she has done here is history and fiction merge seamlessly in Tracy Chevalier's luminous novel about artistic vision and sensual awakening. Through the eyes of 16-year-old Greet, The world of 1660s Holland comes dazzlingly alive in this richly imagined portrait of a young woman who inspired one of Vermeer's most celebrated paintings. And I would like to recommend that if you read this or not, the movie that was made as a result of this novel, starring Scarlett Johansson as Greet, who is, for all intents and purposes, a fictional character, is outstanding as well, and the cinematography is absolutely beautiful. And you'll probably recognize a few actors besides Scarlett Johansson in that movie as well. My next recommendation is The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, and this is one of those books that I would say is more philosophical thinking, and again, it really had me sort of considering the adventure that is life, and just thought it was so fantastic. This enchanting novel has inspired a devoted following around the world. This story, dazzling in its powerful simplicity and its inspiring wisdom, is about an Andalusian shepherd boy named Santiago who travels from his homeland in Spain to the Egyptian desert in search of a treasure buried in the pyramids. Along the way, he meets a gypsy woman, a man who calls himself king, and an alchemist, all of whom point Santiago in the direction of his quest. No one knows what the treasure is or if Santiago will be able to surmount the obstacles along the way, but what starts out as a journey to find worldly goods turns into a discovery of the treasure found within. Highly recommend it. In fact, I think I've just convinced myself that I need to reread this. My next recommendation is The Lovely Bones by Alice Sebold. This is a book that I've actually read more than once because I guess I like heartbreak and to cry. But this this novel was made into a movie directed by Peter Jackson, who did The Lord of the Rings. And it's got some disturbing material in it. I do want to warn you of that. But ultimately, the book is addressing the notions of how do we deal with incredible loss, and what does that loss look like when you're on the other side of it. When we first meet Susie Salmon, she is already in heaven. As she looks down from this strange new place, she tells us in the fresh and spirited voice of a 14-year-old girl a tale that is both haunting and full of hope. In the weeks following her death, Susie watches life continue without her school friends trading rumors about her disappearance, her family holding out hope that she'll be found, her killer trying to cover his tracks. As months pass without leads, Susie sees her parents' marriage being contorted by loss, her sister hardening herself in an effort to stay strong, and her little brother trying to grasp the meaning of the word gone. As she explores the place called heaven, it looks a lot like her school playground with the good kinds of swing sets. There are counselors to help newcomers adjust and friends to roam with. Everything she ever wanted appears as soon as she thinks of it, except the thing she wants most, to be back with the people she loved on earth. So again, it's heartbreaking and there are some disturbing scenes, but ultimately I just loved this writing style and I found it to be haunting in both a sad way, but also a very positive way, the way a good book never leaves you. I felt that way about this book as well. This book is called Like Water for Chocolate by Laura Esquivel. She is a Mexican author, and I have read this book at least 2 times, if not 3 or 4. This was also made into a movie in the 90s, and is just something that has always stuck with me. Like Water for Chocolate is a romantic, poignant tale touched with bittersweet moments of magic and sensuality. Evocative of how to make an American quilt in structure, the narrator's great-aunt Tita is the youngest of 3 daughters born to Mama Elena, a tyrannical owner of the De La Garza Ranch. While still in her mother's womb, she wept so violently that as her mother chopped onions, that she caused Mama Elena to begin early labor. So this is about magical realism in terms of the style, and what happens is the main character ends up becoming a sort of Cinderella. She is born and her mother can have no more children, so she's sort of raised to be this caretaker. She's always going to have to take care of her mother because her father's died, and she has these sort of magical qualities, and because she's raised to be a servant, unlike her two sisters who will be allowed to go off and get married and have children of their own and so forth, she is raised in the kitchen, and she has these sort of magical powers where her emotions that she's feeling as she's cooking go into it. It's divided up into 12 chapters, one for each month, and each month begins with a recipe. So again, a haunting sort of tale, but keep in mind that magical realism is pretty fantastic. I have another nonfiction book that I failed to mention with the first two nonfiction books, and that is Tuesdays with Morrie by Mitch Albom. This book is one that just, I would say, changed my life. I have read it more than once as well, and it's just one of those really touching, thoughtful books that, again, you just think of even in strange times when you don't even realize why you're thinking of it. It says, maybe it was a grandparent or a teacher or a colleague, someone older, patient and wise, who understood when you were young and searching and helped you to see the world as a more profound place, gave you sound advice to help you make your way through it. For Mitch Albom, that person was Morrie Schwartz, his college professor from nearly 20 years ago. Maybe, like Mitch, you lost track of this mentor as you made your way and the insights faded and the world seemed colder. Wouldn't you like to see that person again? Ask bigger questions that still haunt you. Receive wisdom for your busy life today, which the way you once did when you were younger. Mitch Albom has had that second chance. He rediscovered Morrie in the last months of the older man's life. Knowing he was dying, Morrie visited with Mitch in his study every Tuesday, just as they used to back in college. Their rekindled relationship turned into one final class, Lessons in How to Live. Tuesdays with Morrie is a magical chronicle of their time together through which Mitch shares Morrie's lasting gift with the world. It does make me feel a little bit wiser to have read that. And lastly, I'm going to leave you with a book I read over the summer. This is David Binoff's City of Thieves. My cousin recommended this book to me last summer and in fact gave it to me and said I needed to take it and read it, and I did. And also pretty haunting and brutal at times, but I couldn't put it down. During the Nazis' brutal siege of Leningrad, Lev Binov is arrested for looting and thrown into the same cell as a handsome deserter named Kolya. Instead of being executed, Lev and Kolya are given a shot at saving their own lives by complying with an outrageous directive: secure a dozen eggs for a powerful Soviet colonel to use in his daughter's wedding cake. In a city cut off from all supplies and suffering unbelievable deprivation, Lev and Kolya embark on the hunt through the dire lawlessness of Leningrad and behind enemy lines to find the impossible. This will make you not feel so bad about our current quarantine situation, but it might be a book that you save for after the quarantine is over. So those are my 10 recommendations. I've got 3 nonfiction books in there and 7 fiction books. I hope that if you're looking for something to do, that one of these has inspired you, and maybe if not now, one for summer reading. In the meantime, I hope you're doing well, and happy reading.